Okay, first off, before we get started with today's preview, a shout out and an apology to Dustin S. Dustin was the one that requested the Notre Dame video for yesterday. I try to mention that whichever Patreon member requests that particular video in the beginning of the video, and I completely just forgot and left it out. Dustin S., I apologize, but thank you for supporting the channel, sir, and I hope you enjoyed yesterday's Notre Dame video. Okay, on to today's video, another 2019 official Uncle Lou college football preview and prediction. I'm trying to bounce around from conference to conference, keeping in mind now I have to stay within what the Patreon members have suggested. Now, once I get through doing the suggestions from the Patreon page, I'm going to do suggestions from the other places, the comments section. I try to read all the comments on all the videos. I'm making notes here of which teams people are wanting to see, and I promise we'll have plenty of time to get to those teams. But I am doing the Patreon members first to make sure that I don't run out of time and I get to all their suggestions. If you want to join up on the Patreon page, just click the link in the description of this video that says support the channel. It'll take you right over to the Uncle Lou Patreon page and you can get yourself set up. But up today, a team, we've only done one team from this conference so far, so this will make the second team we've done from the Big 12, the official preview and prediction 2019 Texas Longhorns. Okay, here we go to Texas Longhorns. Shout out to Tyler and Parker C. This suggestion, the Texas Longhorns, comes from the two of them over on the Uncle Lou Patreon page. So I hope you guys enjoy this preview and prediction. Let's see, what'd you do last year? 9-3. A pretty good year, right? Texas has had some rough years over the last decade or so. That's not a surprise, not trash talking. It just is. 9-3. Pretty good year. Actually beat Oklahoma in the regular season, which is always a huge deal. Went on to play in the Big 12 title game for the first time in a while, coming up a little bit short there, but did get a bid to a New Year's Six Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, and then a win over my Georgia Bulldogs. So, but 9-3 in the regular season, so 10-4 overall. How did that compare to my prediction for Texas heading into last season? Well, we'll do what we always do. I'll put the ending screen of last year's off-season Texas preview up on the screen, and we'll see how I did. Keep in mind now, I'm catching a lot of slack this offseason, right, for how high I am on Michigan. If you remember the last two off seasons, I've been high on Michigan, and who else was I really high on both of the last two off seasons? Texas. And I caught a similar amount of slack for being high on Texas that I'm catching this year for being high on Michigan. So I know a lot of Texas fans didn't find this channel until last year's Sugar Bowl. I was way higher on Texas both last off seasons than anyone else around. Any of the magazines, any of the preseason polls, whatever. I was very high on Texas mainly because I really liked Tom Herman as a hire there. So I had you at 10-2 last year with your two losses coming to Oklahoma and West Virginia. Now, obviously, like we mentioned, you ended up beating Oklahoma, right? And I had you losing. I had you losing to West Virginia. You, in fact, did lose to West Virginia. Your three losses came to Maryland, Oklahoma State, and West Virginia, as opposed to my prediction of losing to Oklahoma and West Virginia. So I had you at 10-2. You ended up 9-3. All right, let's see what you got coming back this year, what you lost, what your team might look like, your strengths, weaknesses, that kind of thing before we get on to the schedule. Back-to-back top 3 recruiting classes. That's very important, especially when we get ready to talk about the defense here in a minute. But we're going to start with the offense, right? Sam Ehlinger. I like Sam Ehlinger as a player. To me, you know what? You know who Sam Ehlinger reminds me of? Sam Ehlinger reminds me sort of Baker Mayfield without the childish, cocky. And Ehlinger is a little bit cocky, but for some reason it doesn't come off as arrogant as Baker Mayfield did. So I think you get a lot of the positives of leadership and things like that out of Ehlinger that Oklahoma got from Baker Mayfield without some of the negatives, like running from the police, grabbing your crotch, running up and down the sideline for no reason, flailing your arms like a wounded duck. Most people, including myself, can't stand Baker Mayfield. It's hard to find anybody outside of OU fans who doesn't like Sam Ehlinger. I like Sam Ehlinger. He really impressed me in the Sugar Bowl in that win over Georgia. Heisman, I would say he's a Heisman candidate. I don't think he's going to win it. I just feel like either Tua or Trevor is going to win the Heisman this year, whichever one puts up the biggest numbers. It's not that Ehlinger isn't Heisman worthy or wouldn't deserve to win it. I just don't think it's going to happen for him this year. I almost think it's preordained that either Trevor Lawrence or Tua wins the Heisman. But Ehlinger had an all-time great year last year, right? 41 total touchdowns, second in Texas history behind only Colt McCoy, who I think had 45. And it's possible Ehlinger breaks that record this year. He gets compared to Tim Tebow a lot in terms of his playing style. He likes to run. He can run. He's good at it. And not only that, it's the way he runs like a running back. I mean, he'll run it up the middle. He'll face up with a linebacker. You don't see him slide or duck out of bounds a lot. Real tough kid. He comes back, obviously the leader, not just of that offense, but of the entire team. Great year last year. If he can improve even more this year, Texas offense will be even that much better. And Texas had a good offense last year. Texas had a great offense. They're in the Big 12, so there is a lot of high-scoring offenses out there. But Texas ranked around the middle of the Big 12 in scoring offense. I think you were 8th in rushing offense, which is something you really have to improve on this year, I think, in my opinion. And we'll talk about the running backs here in a second. Offensive line, you got to replace 3 starters. You got 3 new starters on your offensive line. Now, normally that's not ideal, but I actually think Texas has more talent on their roster now. I mean, I don't think I know. You can just look at the recruiting rankings. Texas has more talent on their roster now than they did when Tom Herman got there. I mentioned the back-to-back top 3 recruiting classes. So the offensive line, in theory, should be more talented this year, even though they're replacing 3 starters, than it was last year. Now, you never are 100% sure about freshmen or people who haven't played yet until you see them play. And offensive lines tend to take some amount of time to gel and come together and learn to play together as a unit and that kind of thing. And there's no way to know how long that's going to take. In some cases, it happens in fall camp leading up to the season. In some cases, it takes a game or 2 to learn. In other cases, we've seen teams struggle to sort of find cohesiveness along the offensive line, and we've seen those struggles last over the course of a season. I don't expect that to happen with Texas, but we have to at least admit that the possibility exists that it could take some amount of time for that offensive line to come together, although I think they're extremely talented. Running back situation. This is something that's got to get better. 8th rushing in a league. Now, I know the Big 12 is a passing league, but, you look at Oklahoma, they've got stud running backs. Everybody thinks about Oklahoma and throwing the ball, but, the back-to-back Heisman-winning quarterbacks. And, yeah, they've got one of the best passing games in America. But Oklahoma's got some serious NFL running backs to go along with that. Texas really needs some help there, in my opinion. You get Keontae Ingram back. He's been there a while. Reliable. You know what you're going to get with him. One of these guys you recruited, though, this Jordan Whittington, whatever, true freshman, wouldn't surprise me at all to see him get a lot of playing time this year. Maybe he becomes like that elite, level college running back that Texas has been looking for a few years. I like Keontae Ingram. It's not that he's a bad running back. I don't think. Look, if you ask people to start naming the best 10 running backs in college, I don't think Keontae Ingram's going to show up on that list anywhere. So when you get a highly recruited freshman that comes in, that opens up the possibility that maybe he'll be that guy for you, whether it's this year, maybe next year, whatever the case may be. So I like both of these guys. They're talented, but you do need better play from your running backs. I think Texas fans would agree with me on that. Wide receiver. What I wouldn't give for Colin Johnson. Georgia's wide receiver situation is sketchy at best. Now, we have a ton of talent at the wide receiver position. None of it's ever played, not getting into all that. But Colin Johnson, 6'6". I've always been in love with big, tall wide receivers. I know that just because somebody is 6'6" doesn't mean he's going to be a great receiver. I understand that. But you can't coach height. You can't teach height. You can't learn height. You either have it or you don't. You can improve things like route running, blocking downfield, hands. You can do drills to work on your hands, improve your catching, that kind of thing. There's nothing you can do about your height. If you're 6'6", you're 6'6". If you're 6'1" or 5'12", I once knew a guy that was 5'12". Type on it. No amount of coaching, practice, training, doesn't matter what you eat. No, if you're 5'12", you're 5'12". So I've always been in love with these big, tall receivers. And this guy's the real deal. I'm kind of surprised he came back. I guess he sort of played second fiddle to that little Jordan Humphreys that you had last year who went pro a year early. But I think this guy has a future in the NFL. You got Devin, what's this guy? Duvernay. I'm probably saying his name wrong. Devin Duvernay. He's like he's like a track star, right? He's a speedster, right? Take top off of a defense, that kind of thing. And then again with the recruiting, you got this freshman Jake Smith. I don't think anybody will be surprised to see him get some playing time this year too. What outside of running back, this stat struck me as kind of odd. And with the receivers that you had last year and Sam Ehlinger, I mean, honestly, I couldn't believe it. No touchdowns last year of 50 yards or more. How is that possible? No, throwback there. But I don't know, that struck me as weird. Only 3 teams in America didn't have a touchdown of 50 yards or more. You were one of them. 2 NFL wide receivers at least in Humphreys and Johnson. Sam Ehlinger, one of the best years any Texas quarterback has ever had. But not very many explosive plays. Definitely not in getting any out of your running backs last year. But I was surprised, no touchdowns of 50 yards or more. Maybe that's something you can look to improve on this year. On to the defense. Good thing you got those top 3 recruiting classes to fall back on because you replaced 9 starters this year on defense. Now, let me say this about these 9 starters being replaced on defense. I did a spring preview of Texas, like a best case, worst case thing, and I mentioned this 9 starter stat. And this is the case. This isn't just Texas fans. I've had this from other fan bases too when I talk about how many starters they're replacing. Oh, it's not really 9 starters because such and such did this and got hurt, and other player was a nickel, and now he's this and that. Listen, this isn't a guess that you're replacing 9 starters, okay? I mean, this isn't, a lot of things in football are subjective, opinion-based. It's not an opinion that you're replacing 9 starters on defense. It doesn't matter what the alternative facts are you try to give me in the comment section, okay? This thing is tracked. It's like math or science. It's not up for debate, okay? You're replacing 9 starters. We know that you didn't play only 11 players on defense last year. No team played only 11 players on defense last year. Every team rotates guys in and out. Every team has injuries that require another guy come in and get a start or 2. Every team has different packages. So, your base defense, you may have 4 DBs, a nickel 5, a dime 6. So we get it. You maybe 2 of those DBs didn't start but played a lot. Now they're starting. So you're trying to tell me you're not really replacing. You're replacing 9 starters, okay? Look it up somewhere. Anywhere, Athlon Sports, Lindy's, Phil Steele, ESPN, Sporting News, Sports Illustrated, Saturday Down South, anywhere you want to look that tracks this stuff, you're replacing 9 starters on defense. Your entire front 7, all of it, gone. And your 2 cornerbacks, gone. Now, the front 7 would be more of a concern if I'm a Texas fan than the back end. Texas may have the best safety in all of college football. They may have 2 of the best 5 safeties in all of college football. And they definitely have one of the best 2 safety duos in all of college football. Safety, I mean, you got no concerns or worries at the safety position for this year with senior Brandon Jones. And then, of course, sophomore Caden Stearns, who was a freshman All-American last year. And speaking of those top 3 recruiting classes you had back-to-back, if you had to pick out one position group in those recruiting classes where you recruited the best, it's defensive back. You've got a ton of talent at the cornerback position. None of it has started though yet. So we're going to see. You're going to feet to the fire type of thing when the season starts this year. But so your entire front 7 would be more to concern. But again, those recruiting classes, you've got plenty. I mean plenty of young but inexperienced talent to plug into that front 7 that you lost from last year. Your defense took a step back from 17 to 18. You got one of the highest paid coordinators in all of America, this Todd Orlando defensive coordinator. In 2017, Texas had one of the best defenses in America. In 2018, you still had a pretty good defense, but it wasn't quite as good as it was in 17, which was strange because you had a ton of starters coming back in 18 off the 17 team. Now it sort of reverses. You lose 9 starters, a lot of new faces out there. But again, just like I said with the offensive line, the talent is greater at Texas now than it was in 17. Experience is all that Texas is lacking on defense, not talent. Talent-wise, they could stack up with almost any defense in America. And in another year or two, think about how many underclassmen you're going to be starting on the defensive side of the ball this year because you're starting 9 new faces. Next year, your defense will probably be better than whatever it ends up being this year. And the year after that could be one of the best defenses Texas has ever had. So the future is bright at defense, but I do have some questions about how this may work early in the season with 3 new starters on the offensive line and 9 new starters on the defensive side of the ball. So let's put the schedule up now. We'll take a look at it. Of course, we're going to do this the same way we always do it, right? I'm going to run through the schedule game by game, give you a winner and a loser for every single game. Before we start, I give a disclaimer. There's been a couple of predictions that I've made this year that I'm really getting hammered on. This one pops into my head right now, so I'm just going to use this one as an example. I have LSU losing this year on the road at Mississippi State. Obviously, LSU is a better team than Mississippi State, right? But upsets happen all the time in college football. And almost every single team, every single year, loses at least one game that they're supposed to win. At least one game to a team that they are better than, right? And then, obviously, the reverse of that, most teams usually beat at least one team that they're not as good as. And I've got some examples using Texas here because I'm going to get some of these same comments when I do the Texas schedule. So I'm sort of just preparing you ahead of time. Last year, 2018, best season Texas has had in almost a decade. They're back. If you don't believe, ask Sam Ehlinger. You were better than these 3 teams last year. Maryland. Were you better than Maryland last year? Yes, you were. You lost to them. Were you better than Oklahoma State last year, Texas fan? Yes, you were. You lost to them. Were you better than West Virginia last year? Best West Virginia team we've seen in a while. Was Texas a better team overall than West Virginia last year? Yes. You lost all 3 of those games. That's not a trash talk thing. That happens to everybody. Almost every single year. Clemson won the national title last year at 15-0. First time it's ever happened, right? Playoffs started in 14. No one's ever gone 15-0. So up until last year, even the best team in America every single year had lost at least one game to a team they weren't supposed to lose to. 2017, were you better than Maryland? Yes. Were you better than Oklahoma State in 2017? Yes. Were you better than Texas Tech in 2017? Yes. But you lost all 3. And this didn't just start with Tom Herman. Again, it's got nothing to do with Tom Herman. This happens to every team. 2016, you lost to Kansas. I could stop there. There's never been a year on planet Earth where Kansas was better than Texas, but you lost to them. You actually lost to Kansas and Kansas State in the same year. That ought to be like 5 years, shut your program down if that ever happens. You lost to Cal that year. And again, this isn't to point out embarrassing losses you've had. This is to prepare you for what's about to come when I get to this schedule here. My point is, you beat Oklahoma last year. I know you don't cover your ears, Texas fans, because it's not my intention here to make you mad, so cover your ears. Oklahoma was better than you last year, but you still beat them in the regular season. So you beat teams sometimes that you're not supposed to beat, and you lose to teams sometimes that you're not supposed to lose to. It just happens all the time. It's just what it is, okay? All right. Here's the schedule. Week 1, Louisiana Tech, win. Now, Louisiana Tech, I think, is a good team for the classification they're in. It seems like about once a year they play one of these bigger teams pretty tough and pretty close. I don't expect that to happen here. My only concern, and I don't see any way you lose this game, I guess the possibility exists that this game ends up being maybe a little bit closer than some people think because of who you play the following week. I obviously don't know what's going on at Texas practices, but it's very possible a lot of the Texas players and maybe even some of the coaches are already preparing for LSU as opposed to Louisiana Tech. Honestly, I wouldn't necessarily blame them for doing that. But don't do it to the point where this one catches you. I mean, we see some weird losses like this sometimes, right? Where, I don't see that happening. I'll give you the win there. And then, of course, the big week 2 game, you host LSU. Now, I've already done an LSU preview and prediction. So if you've seen that video, you know which way I go here. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this game in this video. You can click back to the LSU preview if you want to hear more of my thoughts on this particular game. If you played LSU in week 10 or 11 instead of week 2, I think that would be a lot better for you. I'm concerned about the offensive line this early in the season. I'm concerned about the defense this early in the season. Again, talent-wise, you may be as talented as LSU on defense, and that's a huge compliment because there aren't many teams in America year in and year out as talented as LSU on defense. Look at the NFL if you don't believe me. You may have close to the same talent level at defense LSU has. That 9 starters thing just concerned me. So, again, if you've seen the LSU video, you already know I have them winning that game, which means I have you losing. LSU's a top 10 team, in my opinion. It's no shame or embarrassment in losing to LSU. It won't be a case where you're looking back on this LSU game like you're looking back on the Maryland game. I can promise you that, and going, I can't believe we lost to Maryland. LSU is a really good team. There's no shame or embarrassment in losing that game. I think this will be a really close game, like a last possession type of game, even maybe. But I did give LSU the win, and that starts you off at 1-1. Then you have a neutral site game with Rice in Houston. Don't want to be scheduling no home and homes with Rice, huh? All right, well, play them in Houston. You'll get a win. Rice, again, I could spend 10 minutes saying good things about Rice. They have no business competing with Texas. Talent-wise, the gap here is huge. You should win this game. Don't have a hangover from LSU if you lose that game. Maybe it stays a little bit close in the first quarter or first half type of thing, but in the end, it shouldn't even be a close game. You'll win. You're 2-1. That takes you into your conference schedule, Big 12 schedule. First conference game at home, Oklahoma State. I think Oklahoma State's a good team. Here's what I think. Here, I'll give you my 30-second synopsis of the Big 12 this year. Oklahoma and Texas, either one could win the Big 12. They're neck and neck. They're very close. I think Oklahoma overall is probably a little bit better team, particularly on offense. I think Texas has recruited better than Oklahoma over the last 2 years especially, but Oklahoma's still their top 5, top 10 every year too. So they're obviously in a league by their own. But then you take Oklahoma State, TCU, Iowa State, and Baylor. I think you take those 4 teams this year, mix them up. I think those are all the 3rd through 6th best team. One of those teams is going to be 3rd. One of them is going to be 4th, 5th, and 6th. I think those teams are about the same. I think the rest of the Big 12 is almost meaningless. So I do think Oklahoma State's a pretty good team. I like their quarterback. Gundy's been there for forever. Boneheaded losses almost every year, it seems like, for Oklahoma State. But again, that's almost everybody. You get them at home. I think you win the game here. I think this could be a high-scoring deal, maybe. We'll see. But I think you get the win starting 1-0 in the Big 12, and that puts you at 3-1 to start the season, taking you into your first of 2 bye weeks that we have this year. Everybody's got 2 bye weeks. Not a change to college football or a new rule or anything like that. It's just the way the calendar falls. In order to get the season to start on Labor Day weekend like they like to do and end with the conference championship games the first Saturday in December, there's an extra Saturday in there this year. So because of that, everybody gets a second bye week. You get your first one after your first 4 games. So 3-1 headed to your first bye week. You come out of that, you have your first true road game after playing a neutral site game against Rice. You go all the way out to West Virginia. One of the longest trips you can possibly make within the Big 12, right? On the road, West Virginia. Pretty good team last year. Will Greer, he's in the NFL now, as is almost every other talented person on that offense from last year. The defense, which wasn't very good last year, loses a ton of pieces to this year. Brand new coaching staff, wholesale changes there. I really like West Virginia's coach too, and I think he's going to have success there. But not this year. This is going to be a rough year for West Virginia. You go on the road and get some revenge for that loss you toted last year. I have you winning at West Virginia. All right, then you got the big one here, right? The Red River Shootout, Red River Rivalry, whatever they're pretending to call it now. Neutral site game in Dallas, played at the State Fair every single year. One of the games near the top of Uncle Lou's bucket list for wanting to go to one day before I keel over. Again, I've done the Oklahoma preview, so you're already prepared for the good news if you've seen that. I have you beating Oklahoma again in the regular season this year. I just think this game is circled every single year for both of these teams. Now, is it the last 5 or 6 games between these two teams have been decided by 7 points or less? I think we could see a similar thing again this year. And here's the thing about Oklahoma. Jalen Hertz comes in, right? Nowhere near the passing ability, in my opinion, of their last two quarterbacks. But he's a competitor with a ton of experience against the best defenses in America. He's, of course, started for Alabama for a couple of years, came in late in the SEC championship game last year to lead Alabama in a big comeback win over Georgia in the SEC title game. So no stage is too big for this guy, especially a regular season game, even though it's a huge rivalry. Again, this guy's played in a couple of Iron Bowls, right? Alabama and Auburn. Stage won't be too big here. If this game is close at the end, I mean, it could be whoever has the ball last wins. I like both quarterbacks at the end of games here. I think you can trust Sam Ehlinger at the end of a game for like a game-winning drive. I think you can trust Jalen Hertz at the end of a game for like a game-ending drive too. Now, obviously, we got to see how Jalen Hertz fits in with OU's offense, how they decide to use him, how much running around they're going to let him do and things like that. So a little bit of unknown there. But still, I think, again, you get a win making it 2 years in a row over your rivalry. I have you beating Oklahoma in the Red River Shootout. So you're still sitting on just the one loss right now when you host Kansas. Les Miles, he's going to improve Kansas. The problem is, look where they're starting. What have they won? 1, 2, and 3 games a year over the last, as long as anybody can remember. Just not a good team, not a good program. On top of that, they've got some serious roster issues because of the number of junior college players the previous coaching staff signed the last 2 years. They're undermanned. You'll run away with that one. You'll come off the big win at Oklahoma. Wouldn't surprise me, again, if you start off slow, big win the week before over Oklahoma, but you should absolutely steamroll Kansas without a problem. Now, here's where the schedule gets difficult for me as a neutral observer here, trying to figure out what's going to happen for the last 5 games of this season here, or whatever it is, 1, 2, 3, last 5 games. When I first started thinking about doing this preview this morning, here's how I would do these previews. I think to myself, what do I think Texas' record will be this year? Without doing any research, without looking at the schedule, without studying the roster and all this kind of stuff. I just, knowing what I know, however much or however little that might be, what do I think Texas' likely record is this year based on their trend and what I know about them? And the number that kept coming into my head was 9-3. That was the number. You got the one loss so far, none in the Big 12. At TCU. Let me just lump these last 5 games all in together. At TCU, then a bye week, home against Kansas State, and then back-to-back road games against Iowa State and Baylor, and then you close the season out with Texas Tech. You're beating Texas Tech, one of the worst defenses in the Big 12, them in Oklahoma. I don't think they have the Jimmies and the Joes or the X's and the O's to compete with Texas or really anybody in the Big 12. You get a win there, okay? Kansas State at home. You get a win there. New coaching staff there, Skeletor, Bill Snyder, he's gone. I have no doubt at all you beat Kansas State and Texas Tech. But then I'm looking at these 3 road games, at TCU, at Iowa State, and at Baylor. I do not think you go 3-0 in those games. I don't think you can go 3-0. You're either going to go 2-1 or 1-2 is what I think is going to happen. TCU, I like Gary Patterson. TCU and Texas, 2 of the only teams in the Big 12 that consistently put out any type of defense consistently year to year. You get them first out of these 3 road games, but then a bye week after. I have you beating TCU. I already told you beat Kansas State. That brings us to these back-to-back road games at Iowa State and at Baylor. Iowa State is a better team, but Baylor is trending in the right direction, in my opinion. A lot of people are sleeping on Baylor. Maybe not in the Big 12, but nationally, not a lot of people are talking about Baylor. Everyone sort of forgot about Baylor when all the Art Briles stuff happened and they lost a bunch of players and coaches and had a bad season or 2. But I actually think Baylor could be a dangerous team this year. I think any of these teams, TCU, Iowa State, or Baylor, Each of those three teams is capable of knocking off one of the big boys this year, Oklahoma or Texas, I think. I think Iowa State's better. I like the way Baylor's headed. You get Iowa State first on the road. People claim, well, one person in particular claims it's impossible to win on the road at Iowa State. I don't buy it. Win. I think you beat Iowa State. Unfortunately, I think you turn around the following week and lose to Baylor. Now, I get it. Listen, yes, you're a better team than Baylor at almost every position group. You're deeper than Baylor. You're probably better coached than Baylor. Again, last year, Maryland, Oak State, West Virginia. 17, Maryland, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech. 16, Kansas, Kansas State, Cal. I mean, you know, come on. Teams lose to teams they're not supposed to lose to all the time. Every single week it happens. Am I going to be shocked if you beat Baylor? No, I won't be shocked at all. Maybe you lose to somebody else that I thought you would beat. I don't know. Oklahoma State's a dangerous team. Maybe they catch you. I don't know. But for the purposes of this video, I have to pick every single game. I'm giving you the L at Baylor, which is going to put you finishing at 10-2. And if that happens, that would be only one loss in the Big 12, which means you're in. You would get into the Big 12 title game. Iowa State, I think, maybe can go 9-3, something like that, maybe. Baylor, 7-5, probably 8-4. Oklahoma State is the wild card. Maybe they ruin someone's season. I don't know, but so that has you at 10-2 with only one Big 12 loss, meaning you'll be back in the Big 12 title game. I've already done the Oklahoma preview and prediction, so if the schedules play out the way I have them, it would be another rematch, Texas and Oklahoma. So I know you're better than Baylor, so if you feel like wasting time in the comment section telling me that, you can. But I'm not changing my mind. These are my official predictions here. I think you go 10-2. That would be a game better than last year, right? And again, a chance to win the Big 12 championship game because I think you'll be there again. Anyway, that's it. Appreciate you guys watching and have a great morning.